Hello, welcome to today's video. And I've been trying to record this for a while, and today I just figured out that I can actually record on my screen and record on my phone as well as record on my camera. So today is Friday and it's January 9, the year is 2026. Today's video is going to be about my presentation, which I did last year and my class. The presentation was about it was about the U.S. government, the government as a venture capitalist in AI. It's a paper that I presented last year that belonged to someone else, but I was about to present it as my own. So that being said, let's jump into it. Let's get started. The title of the paper, this paper is called Government as a Venture Capitalists in AI. The authors are Beraja et al. 2024. The paper came out in 2024. This presentation was for microeconomics reading. It was supposed to be part of the economics reading. It's supposed to read a bunch of papers and choose which one to present in the classroom. When I did this paper, I didn't have enough time to finish it. I was rushed through it. I didn't know that I like it, so I chose to make a video to present this on my own. My name is James Butera, as you can see on the screen, and I will be the presenter for this paper. And this is just cartoon AI changing everything. The authors of this paper were Martin Beraja, Menwei Peng, David Young, Noama Uchman. This is an overview. The main question was, how do government venture capitalist funds shape AI innovation? Relevance to macroeconomics, growth theory, path dependency, information frictions, and policy cycles. Here I start with the graphs. As you can see, the first graph shows the national government venture capitalists, and the second graph shows the local government venture capitalists, and the last graph shows the private venture capitalists. I will refer venture capital as VC for short. And you can see in this graph, blue represents life sciences, then red represents energy, then green represents ICT, which is information technology, information communication technology, then yellow represent AI, and manufacturing represents purple, as well as others, which other investments represent orange. The AI is what we're focusing on today in this, but this overview shows how the nation, the entire government, invests in different types of industries. Then the local governments, how it invest in different industries, then the private sector as well. So they share across different types of funds, right? So you can see the national government actually has been investing 16%. In the AI, they have been focusing more on information technology, which ICT and AI kind of sound similar, but there's a huge difference here. But I'm not going to focus more on that. But the local government, however, has been pretty much invested more, for up to 23% in investments in AI compared to the national government. They have been investing equally in the ICT as well. But then private venture capitalists, private VC is showing right now to be investing even much more, right? Close to the local government, up to 20%, 20.6%. Second slide. Outcome and the theoretical framework. Path dependency. Government VC shapes long-run innovation trajectory. Policy cycles, investment waves observed empirically, and linked to growth theory. Source one, capital allocation and technology diffusion, and real business cycles. No hysteresis, shocks despite contradicted by persistent VC effects. and new non-accelerating inflation rate of the unemployment rate, or NARU, policy demand. So we see this being linked to growth theory, these cycles. As you can see on the graph, this amount of billions of dollars have been invested into the oil farms versus AI farms. Right, as you can see, the AI farms, oil farms has been growing at the same rate as the AI farms as well. So there has been the same growth in investments from the government. So we're focusing on the government here, and the trend for government investment funds, the AI sector and VC funds portfolio. So you can see the trend going up on the graphs. Second side, institutional context. China uses government-guided fund. This is from China. China uses government-guided funds to steer AI sector. All right, combines private VC futures and strategic state goals, and unique frictions like mobility restrictions, political uncertainty, information asymmetry. So this is the share of the graphs, the percentage of the AI firms, and the share distribution across government funds, right? So you can see the distribution of the AI firms in this area. The data, this data and the Pico strategy. The data came from Zero to IPO, which is the company that gathers the data in China. Then China Venture Source reports VC and PE. Like I say, VC is venture capital and PE private equity. Tianyanja, which has like 1.4 million AI firms, and then the full mapping of 1,868 VC funds. And then the period is from year 2000 to 2023. I made a mistake there. Instead of 2000, I did it 200. Tracing 4 years of investments equity path to 90% firms level mapping, and compare government VC versus private VC behavior. This is actually the first slide. We compare it to, we don't focus more on the local government, we focus more on the international government. Empirical evidence, geographical dispersion. Private VC clusters in rich coastal cities. Government VC is evenly distributed across China. So the private venture capital has been seen to be, as we will see in the incoming side, is been concentrated in a coastal cities, and we see this except in other countries like in Africa. For the most countries like in the US and Asia, the farms tend to concentrate more on coastal areas, leaving in a city becoming like very empty and undesirable place to do business. So the government becomes a feeder, right? The government VC is evenly distributed across China, so the government will come in and put the investments within China's country, within the country area. And the government VC overrepresents in the overall GDP regions. So think of this like, if all the farms are concentrated in coastal cities, right? Think about the United States. All farms are in New York City, Washington DC, California, right, Texas, but the Midwest is not really represented. If the government pumps in the money, that money overrepresents the GDP of that area. So think of area like for instance, Ohio, right, or areas like Western Virginia, where the GDP is very low. So by pumping in the money, it overrepresents the GDP of that area. The implication is, this is like an implication of these things, which is the government mitigates special market failures. So the government is trying to see where it's failing, right? They don't give billions of dollars to Apple or billions of dollars to Amazon. They look at who is failing, who's not performing well, this is who they give money to. And when the farms fail in the middle of the country, those farms disappear or get acquired or just move to the coastal city to get other farms, other fundings. So this it makes sense why these middle farms in the middle of the country tends to fail, and the government kind of focus on those farms, not pumping the money. Government VC versus private VC. As you can see on the map, we see the government VC, shifting from the bigger cities like Shanghai and Beijing towards the inner cities that we never even heard of, like Guangzhou and many other cities. Meanwhile, the private sector starts from it has lower investments in the smaller towns, small cities like Shanghai and Shannan, all the way to the more the bigger cities is like Shanghai, Beijing, the more the investments goes up, right? So this is the share of private share of AI farms in the big cities versus the smaller cities from the private venture capitalists. Then the other side is the share of the government investments in AI, comparing from the small towns or small cities to big cities. And the best way to think of this is the GDP, from low GDP area to high GDP area. So the government focuses more on low GDP area to invest in. Meanwhile, the big farms focuses on high GDP area to invest in. So let's look at the geographical distribution relative to AI farms. Empirical evidence farm selection. Government VC invests in farms with weaker ex ante performance. I mentioned this earlier, where they look at farms that have low performance. Where I think of like Silicon Valley, for example. Yes, Silicon Valley is like the big area, but if you want to build a new AI and you live in Mississippi area, you will have to move to Silicon Valley. Then you have to face more competition, and the chances of going bankrupt is much higher. But if you build an AI within the Mississippi area, the government will look at, if you're about to fail, the government will look at that AI company and then impounding the money, eventually giving the local economy more opportunities and more jobs, preventing people from moving to cities instead of staying in one area. So that's what we see here. They focus on failed farms or weaker farms that cannot access funds or access capital. That situation. Yet government-backed farms grow faster than private VC farms. So this research proved that when the government in China invests in these farms, even though they are failing and they're in an area that is not desired by private farms, they have seemed to be growing faster than the actual private funded farms. So this is a good thing, considering that the private farms they make choices where they think is the best to invest. So they cluster on coastal city, or the government chooses to invest in these small farms that are struggling, but these farms grow much faster, which suggests that superior information or better alignment with policy and environment. So this suggests that when the government invests in the fish farms and they grow faster, it means that the government has already done enough homework, they have enough information, and they know they have the policy that aligns with the environment of the area. The second slide, hometown advantage. Okay, both government and private VC perform better with investing locally. All right, so instead of Amazon, building tens of thousands of headquarters in the other places, they can just build headquarters in their own hometown and develop the hometown instead of expanding. Right? Local farms identify high potential farms using an observable. Okay, so the local farmers can easily see where is the potential, where is the way to move things around. They can actually sort of identify the potential performance which cannot be observed by the outsiders, right? Important interactions with regional growth dynamics, so they can interact with the local regional dynamics and the local areas. And this I threw in this chart to showcase the statistical analysis of farms, and they did very detailed regulations, which is very mathematical, but you can pause the video and take a look at it if you wanna do that. But it shows the mean outcomes, the farm year fixed effect, the farm province fixed effect, and the ex ante controls. These are not relevant to know unless you want to get deeper into statistics. I put this in there because I feel like the professor may ask it, but if you are just trying to consume the information, this is not going to be relevant. Then it looks at hometown government venture capitalist, and then hometown private venture capitalist. So I'm not going to go deeper to explain this outcome. Interaction between government and private sector, private venture capitalists. So this is the interaction between the two. In 71% of the cases, government VC invests first. Okay, so this is like 1/3%, right? So you have 70% of cases where government VC invests first. So if I used America as an example, ChatGPT is not going to wake up in the morning and they say, I'm going to build a huge office in Alabama, or build a big office in a low-income area like Louisiana, or a very low-income area like West Virginia. And that's because farms don't have information. They are not local. The government understands the local market. The government understands the local community. And in order for ChatGPT to move to West Virginia and build an office there, or expand an office there, they would need the government to invest first. So it's been proven that in China, when the government invests first, other farms will also follow. So 90% of the time, as we have seen, farms that invest money fast, when government invests in farms, those farms that gets invested by the government first, they grow faster. So the farms grow faster. Guess what happened? They attract other farmers to move in as well. Private VC follows government signals. This is also has been proven, observed in China, where the private VC follows government signals. So the private VC, I mentioned this, right? Private venture capitalists would not invest if the government doesn't do it. So they come after the government. This was the U.S. business model before the changing of the model. By before, like back in Great Depression, right? United States government was the one that invested. They built dams, they built highways, they built airports, or they built infrastructure. And then private farmers would come in, individual investors would come in and invest after the government. As we will see, there's a lot of trust when the government goes fast, and then the private individuals come later, instead of waiting for the private individuals to come fast and the government comes fast later. Direct government investments equal to strong crowd effect. Okay, so I just mentioned this right now. The direct government investments, if when the government invests directly, whether it's in infrastructure, whether it's in AI, but as you've seen in China, it attracts strong crowd effect. So more people will be interested in going there, right? There's a legitimacy when the government invests in something. Effect is strongest when farms have weaker initial signals. Okay. Effect strongest when farms have weaker initial signals. So when farms don't have enough, if they don't feel like they should or should not, and they see the government jumping in there, right? They quickly start to invest. We have seen in the United States here, US has been following China over time because they have been lagging behind. But we have seen when the United States jumps into something, the private sector jumps in fast. They fall fast, and they have uncertainty, right? Like when social media came out, right? The people were not really trusting the social media. They don't trusting the boom of .com. When the government jumps in, started using it, we see people and more farms coming up. We see innovations coming up. We see patents coming up and the boom forward, right? Similar can be done with other industries like EVs, right? Where if the government gets involved in there, they start transforming and building factories across the country. We will see people start instead of doubting electric vehicle, now they start buying them, right? Because they are, if the market is, if the specific industry is struggling and is having some doubt, we will see the government trying to get people trying to also jump on the crowd and if they see weaker signals. This graph showcases the government VC, the national government VC, the hometown government VC, and the non-hometown government VC. So it is there is still a huge advantages, but you can see like from these are the cities where you see Beijing, you see Shanghai, you see top, middle, bottom, right? The top two and the rest, and then the bottom, right? You can see big cities have higher advantages because remember the private sector invests in coastal cities, which is like Beijing, and those big established cities like New York City, for instance, if it was in USA, New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, Houston, Texas, all those places. But in a very low area or the middle area, we see the hometown government having a huge advantage, right? That's the middle top, right? The hometown government having an advantage in terms of investments. But when it came to the bottom level, the government plays a big role in there, right? Both the government and the hometown, but the small farms do not have advantage on that, right? So that's what we see here. Macroeconomic interpretations, path dependency. Early government VC shapes sectoral revolutions, as we have seen in other slides. So it does. The early government VC or the early government venture capital shapes sectorial evolution. It does shape the sector. Any sector, it can be manufacturing, can be technology, right? But the government invests in area as it sees fits. It does drive the evolution. Persistent effects. Contrary to RBC or real business cycle, no hysteresis assumption here. These are like very economics theories and economic terms that I will spend time explaining, but real business cycles and our hysteresis assumptions have a meaning in economics. Externalities, spatial and information frictions justify interventions. All right. So these are like externalities, right? The spatial and information frictions justify intervention. So the information and friction, spatial information can justify intervention. So this doesn't really like they just based on information like, hey, West Virginia is poor, therefore we should invest in there, right? They don't really have a much. It justify the information. They don't have to go deeper to analyze the market. They just need that small information. That just justifies the intervention quickly. Endogenous growth model. Endogenous growth. This is again an economic term that you can look it up. Set investments stimulate innovation cycles, right? So it creates some innovation cycles. Well, of course, when the money comes in from the government in a poor area or a GDP area to help the raw farms, guess what? That's what they do. They innovate more, right? Because they want to see that effect happening. Policy implications. Government as a VC can complement markets where information is scarce, right? Effects in raw information, high friction environments, and risk corruption, political capture, inefficiency allocations. All right, so let me talk about this for a moment. Government as a VC can't complement the markets where information is scarce. Okay, so no one in Washington D.C. says, let me go and study West Virginia and look up how people are poor, or let me go and study South Carolina and how poor people are. Personally, I didn't know how poor South Carolina was until one time I went to work there as a driver. I was driving for Amazon, and I witnessed the deep poverty in that area. People are extremely poor. Meanwhile, in the border to North Carolina, people are extremely rich and wealthy, right? Big land, big assets, big housing, right? So, government, when the government has that information, they know people are poor in that area. They know because they can track taxes, they can track. There are many mechanisms they can use to track this. So they know on database that these people are poor, and they know that these farms are shutting down. They know that a specific shop is shutting down, a specific Walmart store is closing. They know this information, but if they choose not to intervene, then there will be no economic output. Private farms will never have the courage to invest. But when the government jumps in and that puts in the money, it helps, and then it attracts even more farms. Effect in low information, high friction environments, same thing, right? It's a very effect in low information and high friction environments. Risks, there's a risk that comes with this, even though China successfully did this. There are other things that can be very problematic, things like corruption, right? The United States is relatively doing better, but there is not necessarily corruption, but there's a bureaucracy where politicians will be lobbying to take the money. They will not allow money to be invested where it's supposed to be. And then political capture, right? And inefficiency allocation. So there will be, if Washington D.C. passes, if the Congress passes a budget of $50 billion to be distributed across the country, but the people from California, the lawmakers from California can convince the government to give them more money, or a company like Apple can lobby the president to give more money to them than it can to a small farm, then this will violate the efficiency allocation theories, and then places like West Virginia will still be poor, regardless if the money is passed or not. Right? It requires strong institutions and accountability. So there needs to be a very strong accountability and strong control. Something that is very hard to do, especially in the United States, where there's a balance of power, but no actual balance of power exists. Right? So in conclusion, government VCs act as innovation catalysts. They fill geographical and information gaps, and their actions carry strong signals of value. Important examples of state market complementary in growth, and the relevance shows how policy can shape long-run technological trajectories. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. Like always, I appreciate you, and that's what I have for today.